big budget changes and the difference it's making to commercial real estate at the moment. We're going to talk about it right now. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Good morning. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Burgio Mark Novak, episode 1670. It's commercial properties time to shine with this year's budget, all the talk of residential, all the negative changes, you could say, to negative gearing. We've seen a massive increase a positive increase in first-time seasoned residential investors wanting to know about commercial property. So, Mark, what is commercial property? Why is it appealing? And why should buyers be looking at it?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that the incentives I look at this budget that's come through, and I think there's a lot of penalties. There's a penalty for this, and there's a penalty for that, and they've been penalised for stuff out there, not incentivised for investors out there, which I think has been the most interesting thing to actually watch. Having said that, after the tide left the next day, a couple of days, a week later, everyone was like, hang on a sec, commercial's been untouched. So, that grandfathering that's been referred to and all this stuff, like literally everything in commercial was grandfathered.
Yeah.
And then the stuff that was penalised with new capital gains rules or penalised with new negative gearing rules, now it's made residential look like no, and it's made commercial look like wow.
And what would be the elevator pitch for why to buy commercial property, and a bit of the sort of stigma attached to it? I think a lot of my sort of pitch or observation would be the residential buyer thinks properties are empty for a long time. There's no capital growth. Like, why should people buy commercial property? Hey,
Crazy. I'm doing that.
Special.
I think. Look, with commercial property, just the incentives alone, people are actually borrowing more. So I think it's quite interesting that with those incentives, with second-hand property, residential, you basically are borrowing 20%, or you can only borrow, or your lending capacity is 20% less, but the same lending capacities remain with your commercial. So again, not penalised.
And even though we suspect residential rents will go up, your benchmark residential is normally 2-3%, so maybe 3-4% gross return. Commercial property, we're seeing returns of 6-8% net, which is effectively 8-10% growth. So what that means out there, let's say you buy a property for $1 million, residential, you would expect $30,000 a year net rental income, so that's a 3% return. Now, if you go buy $1 million commercial property, that rental return, you're going to expect $80,000 a year. So it's a really good asset where we're getting and when we tell your residential buyer, they're like, wow, why didn't I think of this sooner? I wish I knew about it. And it's just such more niche. Like when we look at commercial agents on the northern beaches, there's 2,000 residential and 5-7 commercial agents. We're quite a unicorn. We're very special. And ones that do both, they don't exist except here.
I think that I think also that the bottom line is net. Like we are dealing with more people and more inquiries, and it could be the ship hot, cool new thing. I do think it was punished. Commercial, Michael, you've been an agent for 15 years in commercial, and you've seen it come in and out of cycles or fashion or interest levels on property. And we're definitely seeing that interest level spiking even in a couple of weeks. And we're completely attributing it, I don't think, to a cycle. It's to the budget.
Yes.
So what's the next 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years going to hold with commercial if it's already doing that now?
Yes, the cycle, it's definitely not a sort of a cycle because as much as the negative gearing and those punishments on residential are positive for the commercial owner occupier market, you're definitely seeing an equal punishing on some of the business side of it, like potential leasing and tenants. There is some there was some concern initially, like after the budget, I think we had the quietest leasing inquiries ever. And that's just the thought of businesses. Why build up a business if you've got to sell half it for 50% tax? So that hurt. But in combination of the revision of that, it's going to bring that back on top of your own occupier market. Really exciting times for commercial. We've had it tough since COVID.
What about what's happened with just another penalty with the greens and
Oh,
with
yeah.
like superannuation?
Yeah, no super, and their Greens pressured good old Albo to exclude residential purchases from your super fund,
But
not commercial.
another one.
Another one.
So I think that if that's the net yield in the last 2 or 3 months since the budget's come out, I think this is going to be another huge incentive because people that have, as a working example, if you haven't realised what's happened, if people have got 300 grand in super, they would borrow 400 grand and maybe you'd buy something for 7. Now you cannot borrow in your super any longer. So
You would think all these politicians have commercial
but you can commercial. So it's another thing. And again, it takes a while before the good word gets out. People actually work it out, unpack it. Some people started and unpacked it.
correct.
It could take months or years. I notice sometimes I'm telling people stuff about super. They're like, really? I'm like, man, this has been out for like 10 years.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason we do this podcast.
Yeah. So it's going to be really, really, really interesting, that commercial landscape. Keep an eye out on it. And I think with people are going, yeah, but business is not the best. How is that going to affect commercial? People downsize.
Yep.
So, we're finding we've got commercial factories in French's Forest, and people actually are coming from. Is that what happened?
He kept dropping. I was wigging out. Like,
I don't know.
yeah.
I was like, did I put that camera that low?
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
It was
I was going to go.
It was.
Oi.
Oh,
But no, I'll stick it there. Sorry, I got a sticker there.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think keep an eye on commercial. Don't worry about rentals. I think there's always room for people upsizing, downsizing, irrelevant to that economy. Be prepared a little bit for vacancy with it, but be prepared for better yields.
And my best advice to clients all the time is when it comes to vacancy, it's no surprise. The best property could take a month to rent out or 6 months.
Yep.
But when instead of having that residential mindset of if the bank will give me $1 million loan of 95%, you don't have to do that with commercial, because in residential, for example, to get into the market, let's say of a 2-bedroom apartment, you may need $1 million or it's nothing. The beautiful thing about commercial that I love, it doesn't matter if you have $100,000, $1 million, or $10 million, your return on that asset is all very similar.
Yep.
So yes, it would be great to stretch it to buy an 800 grand asset, get a mortgage of 600 grand, and you're getting a 6% return on the 800. Yes, but if it does leave you vulnerable to vacancy, let's say if it's empty for 6 months, we're screwed. Then don't push it. Buy for 500,000. Get your 6% return, pay it off, and buy another one when you're more comfortable with it. Because also what people don't understand, in a lease agreement, typically between...
I can have the camera this time.
That's all me. Before a lease agreement, when it's, let's say it's a 3-year lease with a 3-year option, the tenant should be notifying you 3 to 6 months, 6 months before the end of that lease, if they're leaving. So you can, even though we say 6 months vacancy, 6 months to find a tenant, that doesn't mean the property's vacant. It could be getting rent all the way up until it's leased. You just need a great agency to manage your property and be proactive with it.
And guys, don't forget that super purchases, if you want to borrow money, not going to be able to do it in rentals, in residential now. It has to be commercial. So you may, it's just the perfect segue now. We've got stuff from 200,000 where you can buy it's commercial. We've got stuff from 700, a million. You can buy
20 million.
You can borrow 60, 70%. I had a chat the other night with a friend who's paying, they've got a college training, they do training, and they've got, I think it was 600 meters squared of space. And I'm like, dude, just you should be buying something you see. Like, yeah, actually, that's a great idea. So just keep your mind open to that. And I do think it is the time to shine for commercial because you can still money, you can still in your super, you can still get gearing, negative gearing, your capital gains tax like the old system. So there's just these huge reasons now to continue to down that path of investing with residential, commercial. Yeah, so it's big now. So and it's happening under our nose, and I don't think anyone's actually having that rah commercial chat with people that are looking at the property stuff in the budget.
Correct.
Thanks, Serge.
Thank you.